Oh, okay.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone can hear me. Calling our finance meeting to order. First up is going to be to accept the April 8th minutes. Do I have a motion to do that? Moved by James Griffith, second by Dave O'Brien. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, the first thing we have is Joe Scott, is our bond counsel at the IDA, and he's gonna discuss the Glennet Highland Meadows and the CDC, which is a division of the IDA. So, you there, Joe?
I am, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to attend the meeting this morning. What's before you is the consideration of a project to be undertaken for the Glennet Highland Meadows. The need for County Board of Supervisors approval at both Warren County level and the Washington County level is a technical tax requirement under the Internal Revenue Code. The CDC is being asked to assist in the financing of that capital project. And the assistance consists of the issuance of tax-exempt bonds to lower the borrowing cost to that would be paid by the Glennet Highland Meadows. No other benefits are being extended other than perhaps a mortgage recording tax. And the Internal Revenue Code requires the CDC to hold a public hearing with respect to the issuance of the bonds. And the CDC has held that, and the chair of the CDC, Mr. O'Brien, is attending this meeting also, obviously, and he can attest to the holding of the hearing and the fact that there was no one from the public attending the hearing, so there were no comments from the public with respect to the project. And then once we have held the public hearing, then both boards of supervisors are in a position to grant approval to the issuance of the bonds. The bonds are actually issued, as I said, by CDC, and the requirement that the two boards approve the issuance of the bonds is a technical Internal Revenue Code requirement contained in the code as a condition to the issuance of the bonds, and to make sure that they comply with the Internal Revenue Code and are eligible for federal tax exempt status. There's no obligation on the part of either county with respect to the repayment of the debt, and the resolutions will make clear that case. So this is an obligation only of the Glennet Highland Meadows, not of the two counties. And what we're doing through the Board of Supervisors is providing public approval, if you will, that's a defined term of the code, toward the financing. So that's a summary of the transaction, and I'm more than happy to address any questions or comments from you or the other members of the committee.
Okay, I guess I'd have Dave give us a synopsis of what it is at Highland Meadows, just to let the whole board know what we're referring to.
There are two additions being done to Highland at the Glen. And the first is they're adding 28 apartments, which are for assisted living. And they already have pre-sold on those, pre-rented on those 25 of those 28 units. More importantly, which is really taking up a majority of the bonding process, or a large part of the bonding process, is their memory care units. There's a crying need for, actually a desperate need for memory units here, and they are putting on 30 memory units to care for people with dementia or Alzheimer's. This has been known for quite a few years that there is a need for this type of housing for people and care for people. So that's the biggest part of it, and it's, of course, Highland is a nonprofit organization. It's been successful with the structures and the facilities they have up there. So it really is for the good of the community. It did go before Warren County and has passed Warren County's Finance Committee also. So that.
Okay. Only thing I would add to that is they have units, I believe, that are just units for people that are elderly. Then they go to the next step, assisted living. Now they're adding another step, and it's still a way of keeping people out of the nursing home. And each one is a different level of cost, but each level still keeps below the cost of nursing home care, which in turn keeps cost out of, well, the Glenn's probably in Warren County, so it'd keep it off their Medicaid bill. So that's kind of where we're at. Okay, so is there any questions from any of the board? Okay, so I need a motion to move this. Moved by Dana Hogan, second by Don Ward. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Barb.
Hey,
And
Joe.
Matt, take care. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is real property. Go ahead, Laura.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. we
Okay,
can.
perfect. I've had some technical difficulties already this morning. Hopefully I can get through this one today. Sorry about that. Okay, I only have a couple things on the agenda today is my report. We had a couple parcels in the town of Hebron that the assessor last year failed to put the ag exemption on. The person had applied. So I did the refund applications for those two parcels for Hebron. That I have is resolution A. The assessor placed an improvement on this property in the town of Fort Edward. The resolution for that to go through, please.
Do I have a motion for resolution A?
Move it.
Moved by Cassie Feather. Is there a second? Don Ward and Jay Skelly. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Or carried.
Okay, and then the other thing that was Al and I had both touched base on prior was regarding the governor signing the legislation so that the villages were not allowed to put any water levies on the village bills. That was signed by the governor on the 11th on Monday, on Tuesday. So that will go into effect. The villages will not be able to put any water levies on their tax bills. I've asked them all to also check with the council if they have any questions on that. That only hit on water levies and utility bills.
Okay. So that's it for real property then?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Laura.
Yep.
Okay, treasurer.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I have good news and bad news. The good news is I have a lot of good news. The bad news is I'm going to be talking for a little while. So we'll start off with the current year information first. Hopefully you all received this morning's email with the sales tax update in it. I held off because there was a deposit this morning I was waiting for. So I wanted you to have the most current information, and I'm glad I did because it was up another 180,000, putting us almost 1.5 million up over this time last year. So that's encouraging. It's nice that we're staying strong in that sales tax department. I have no way to determine if it's the current environment or if it's our new norm. Only time will tell that. So we'll continue to monitor it, and any information I get, I will share with you. But I am extremely encouraged at this point that the growth continues to trend up. And as far as the 2021 budget, now that we're through the first quarter, I wanted to go over a couple of the highlights that are important for you. The total revenues are $1.1 million lower than the same time last year. However, there was $2.5 million in social services claims last year posted that are not yet posted this year. So apples to apples, we're probably up $1 million, and most of that is the sales tax. Of course, these numbers are before this morning as well. The additional mortgage taxes that we're collecting on, for the community college are up $222,000 from this time last year. Code enforcement's up 19,000, the jail's up 66,000, sheriff's up 29,886. Public health is up 340,000. My guess is a lot of that's to do with some of this COVID money, but the expenses are down $1 million over this time last year. And some of that though is because the $500,000 in ACC money was made after April last year, and this year was made in April. So there's a 1 month timing issue on that expense. So it's not necessarily apples to apples, but it's part of why the $1 million is down. It's really closer to $500,000. DSS expenses are down $1 million over this time last year, and 831,000 of that is already on the Medicaid line. So that's good. They gave us a large break from the enhanced federal stimulus money, and it brought our payment down to like $154,000. Starting in June, that's going to go back to 193, which is still lower than where it was prior to January of 2021. So even though it's going to be over where we are right now, it's still under where we were in 2020. So still good news that the FMAP monies continue to offset the county's cap number. So again, fantastic news moving forward for the county, because I'm sure that Brian will tell you that he budgeted for the $200,000 number for the year. So there's a little cushion in the Medicaid line. And of course, some of that has some offset on the revenue side, but it's not the 75-25 that you're familiar with in their other programs. They get a small admin piece of the Medicaid. So any savings on the Medicaid line is real savings for the county. The carpool revenues are down $89,000. Obviously, due to the COVID situation, we haven't been traveling. We're not going to trainings. Most of the trainings are being done by Zoom. So the cars right now are being used a lot less. So it only stands to reason that the carpool revenues will be down accordingly. One of the conversations that the board will be having, I'm assuming at budget time, will be because the cars had so many fewer miles on them last year and this year, the replacement schedule may need to be looked at. Do we need to replace as many cars if 10 of them sat in the lot and didn't move last year? But that's a discussion for a later date, just something to kind of plant the seed in your head. The county road revenues are down 126,000, but the transfer from general fund is down 400,000. So, and most of that, the difference in there is a state aid adjustment from last year. County road machinery is pretty close to this time last year. The equipment rentals are up 27,000 though, and that's almost all on the snow and ice line. So in the first quarter of this year, we had a couple more snow and ice call outs than we had at the same time over 2020. And that's something you've seen more than once. So I will, with your indulgence, move on to the 2020 financial recap. Hopefully you all either were provided a physical copy or received the physical copy in the mail. I didn't dare send a PDF copy because I never know what size document you can download depending on your internet service. So I figured that mail was probably the best way to get them to you this year. The general fund, the two important items in general fund is one, the tax collections were down. And we've discussed this a little bit before. They were about $2.2 million down from 2019. And that's reflected in what's called the deferred tax revenue liability. And you see that went from $3.9 million to $6.1 million. So the only upside of that conversation, remember, is that eventually, when the foreclosure moratorium is lifted, there will be a reckoning of that number, because those taxes won't be delinquent forever. At some point, we will be able to move forward with foreclosure, or the homeowners will be able to pay, whichever comes first. But, you know, one of my concerns, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, the properties that were scheduled to go to auction in October of 2020 that did not go, by the time this moratorium is lifted, they will have 5 years of delinquent taxes rather than 3. It may be a hole that is then too big for the homeowner to bail out of. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I have some concerns. Not that I want to take properties, but the longer it goes without our enforcement, the harder it becomes for the homeowner to save that property. So it'll be interesting to watch that play out. As you know, the foreclosure moratorium has been extended through August 31st. That's going to put us probably not having an auction again this year, probably looking at spring of next year. I mean, we could do something in January, February. It's just, it'd be a terrible month to have an auction, in my opinion, but we'll talk about that further. I've got some feelers out to some of my peers, because I've seen some motion in other counties with some sales happening, and I'm trying to pick their brains on how they're having a sale. Some of it, I believe, is probably because they're not looking at residential properties. I'll try to confirm that for you. If that's the case, we can also have a conversation about that. Do we want to start splitting out, you know, non-owner occupied properties like vacant lands and stuff, and start shedding those? Because the moratorium, remember, covers people who have been affected by the COVID crisis, and they'll actually file a paper with you saying I've been affected by the COVID crisis. So there are avenues to proceed on some of the properties. The conversation with this board later will be, do you want to start piecemealing some of the stuff out, or do you want to just wait till spring and have a full auction like you're used to seeing? That will be for another day. One of the times that I don't mind being wrong, I think I told you that we would probably use around $500,000 of fund balance in general fund. If you had a chance to look over the sheet, you'll see that that's not the case. We actually added, I'm trying to find the number here, apologize. We actually added $473,000 to the general fund. Part of that, turns out, was a large influx of social services revenue between some Family First flexible spending money and the restoration of the 15% that was withheld. So with that big adjustment in social services, we covered almost all of what we had to write off in the deferred tax revenue on the unpaid taxes. So where we thought we were going to have a $500,000 loss in general, we had almost a $500,000 surplus. But like I said, that whole swing is almost all related to the social services revenue adjustment. So again, I'm more than happy to be wrong when it's going the right direction. Is there any questions on general fund before I start going through some of the small ones real quick? Okay, carpool. Carpool fund, you'll see we've got carpool fund back fairly strong again. This board made the right decision when it restored the $360,000 that was taken a couple of years ago. You'll remember when that money was taken out of carpool and sent back to general fund, and it put the carpool fund in a precarious predicament. And you made the decision to send that money back, and it put them at $496,000 of fund balance. And the level that we've kind of recommended in the past was 500,000. So you're almost right on the money with the carpool. So it'll be interesting watching that going forward, because Brian and I continue to have conversations about whether or not the rate is set properly. As you know, our rate is not anywhere near the state or the federal reimbursement rate. But in order to adjust our rate in carpool, remember, it also adjusts the expense side and all the other funds that pay carpool. So there's no such thing as a free lunch when it comes to fixing carpool. So that conversation will continue. The county road fund added about $600,000 to its fund balance. That's almost all primarily to the inability to use all of the paving money. And I think you're probably pretty aware of why we couldn't pave. We started really late before we could even get the crews out on the road because of COVID. And then the season just was so much shorter. The only, I shouldn't say the only, but one of the upsides is that any of the unused CHIPS money that she has for last year will roll forward. And, you know, I'm sure Brian at some point, it might even be today, we'll be talking about the new levels of CHIPS, the carry forward, the Pave New York, and the extreme winter recovery. It may be going to Public Works. It may be talked about today. I'm not entirely sure.
Public Works.
Okay. Public
Yep.
Works is a good place for it to start. So that's good. But that was all good news too. And I think that all of you at the town level probably received the same good news. We're all up to some level on all three of those programs. So I'm sure Deb will have a very nice ask of you at Public Works, because she's going to have some money to get some jobs done that we didn't know was coming. In addition to the new money, she's also got rollover money from last year. So it will have a significant impact on what she can actually pave this year. And that's good news. Because remember, you know, the more that we pave in the county road fund, that generates the county road machinery revenues that helps the county road machinery fund. And that's the next fund in the booklet. And it's really the only, I'm not going to say bad news, but the only grayish news in this packet really is this fund. The county road machinery fund is still struggling to be stable. Brian has spent a lot of time looking at it. He's working with Deb on it. Buying the trucks early last year, I think, will make a helpful impact. He's got some decisions to make with you all on how he wants to proceed in 2021. But that fund balance dropping from 689 to 225 is a little disconcerting. And I know that some of it has to do with, you know, the early truck purchase, but there's still, that fund still continues to go down every year, which is not sustainable. If we can't right size the county road machinery fund, we're going to end up supplementing it with general fund money, and let's not do that. So I think that additional paving in the county road fund is a huge thing this year, because it generates the revenue into this fund on the machinery rentals that we pay ourselves. So that's that.
Yeah, that may sustain it.
It may right size it for a little while. And if we can keep that level of paving or somewhere near that level of paving, it can only help us moving forward in the road machinery fund. And, you know, obviously looking at, you know, equipment replacements, replacement cycles, you know, Brian continues to work with Deb on all of that stuff, and you'll be hearing more from them at budget time, I'm sure. The sewer district continues to remain strong. Joe, even though he had some unexpected expenses, his capital reserve continues to grow, which is the money that's set aside for his debt service. And he's going to need it, because as you remember, Joe's facing about a $25 to $30 million long-term control plan capital project that we're only about $8 million into. So while he's adding to the fund right now, that money is going to be needed in the near future, because they're going to have to borrow, and they're getting ready to borrow phase, I call it phase 3, they call it phase 2, but that's getting ready to kick off. And there's a lot of plant upgrades in this next phase. So, but he's in a good position, and the district's in a good position financially moving forward to support that debt service. The Washington County Self-Insurance Health Insurance Fund is another piece of good news that not only affected 2020, but you find that it also helped 2021. The fund, we've had more revenues going into the fund than claims coming out of the fund. So the fund continues to grow. We ended 2020 at 4.4 million, and already this year we've cracked the $5 million level. So what's beautiful about that is two things. One, the fund is extremely strong now and can handle some of the, the severe market fluctuations that you see. But it also, we just did a renewal, and thanks to Melissa's hard work, working with Jaeger, yes, we're switching carriers again, but they put a lot of time into it, and it's the right thing to do. With the help of Melissa Fitch and Jaeger and Brian utilizing this fund to help stabilize the rates, we kept the increase at a real reasonable. I mean, we started over 20%. This renewal started at over 20, and I think my memory is that we're under 3. Is that correct, Brian?
Yes, I believe so.
So what's nice is it's about $700,000 of this fund, if it's needed, is available to offset that increase. And remember, starting June 1st, it's a 25-75 split with the employee and the employer. So not only does the employee save, well, I shouldn't say save, because less of an increase is not a decrease, but 3% is a far cry better than 20%. And especially because that 3% going to 20% would have also been going from 24% contribution to 25% contribution. So it would have had a compounding effect on the employees. So in the same aspect on the county side, our 75%, if we had to pay 75% of the 20% increase, it's a substantial number. And then you all are trying to find where that money's coming from in the other funds. So I thank Brian and Melissa and Jaeger for all their hard work, keeping this fund stable and actually putting it in a real position of strength for the ensuing years. Workers' compensation, again, I want to thank this board for a decision that they made in 2020, where we took some of the reserve money and dropped that reserve down, because that reserve's been in place. I've been here since 1994 and we've never had to tap it. So freeing up some of that money, because the fund literally was at a point where you're going to have to do something. Either you're going to have to infuse it with general fund cash, or you're going to have to take the rates out to all the towns and villages and really hit them hard. And that's not acceptable either. So freeing up that reserve money to unreserved money should give us enough time, because as you remember, you're paying actual claims now. So in theory, every 3 years, this fund will replenish the claims from 3 years ago. So with it having that little cash infusion from the reserve fund, I think that you're probably going to find it in a better position moving forward. Again, there are several conversations we can have in committee about, or at budget time, whatever you're comfortable with. We've talked more than once about changing this fund to more like a real insurance fund. And instead of all this manipulation of claims and no more than double and first 20,000 and all of this, I mean, it's 6 pages of local law to calculate this thing. And I think that there might be an easier way to do this as a rate-based system. Now, I'm not an expert in the insurance world, and I don't claim to be, but I believe that there's probably a way that you could get an actuary to look at this fund and come up with rates that are scaled so that there's a higher rate for like highway and sheriff than there would be for an account clerk. So I think that you can probably have some sliding rates based on the job risks, and then based on the number of positions you have in your town, that determines the rate for your town. That's a conversation again for a later date, but it's a far cry easier than what we're trying to do to keep this fund alive right now with actual claims and claims pooled and carried over to next year. It's a lot of work that doesn't seem to be paying off because everything over that 20,000 and everything over that more than double still has to come from somewhere. So even though you're going to pay me tomorrow, it doesn't help me today. So again, it's a fund we'll have some conversations on, but the good news is it finished 2020 nice and strong. That's a lot at you fast, and it really is a 10,000 foot dive. If there's anything in the report at all that you have questions about, if there's anything that we talked about this morning you have questions about, I'm all ears. If you want to contact me later, that's absolutely fine. Be more than happy to take a look at it from the lovely shores of Lake Champlain. So.
Okay, Al, I think I want to do resolution B because that's, all your various departments amending the budget for what you just went over. Your whole summary basically relies on all this money being moved. So I guess in case there's any questions anybody has, I'll introduce resolution B now and ask for a motion to move that.
And just a reminder, this is just cleaning up the budgets. It's moving money between lines. There's no new money here. This is all increases and decreases within the budget to clean up some small overages and underages. And it's really just to clean up the budget. There's zero budget impact and zero impact on the actual fund balance.
Okay, I think I had moved by Cassie and seconded by Dave. Is there any discussion with Al on any of these? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then we come to your next part, was C. The NSTEM capital project closure.
So as most of you remember, in March of this year, our short-term financing for ACC went to long-term. Now that money's long-term, it becomes debt service in the general fund, and we can close out the capital project that we use for the building phase.
There's 65,000 left over that will be left in that fund to actually pay this first payment. Is that correct, Al?
Nope, it'll come over to general fund and be reserved for debt. So yeah.
So it's reserved for that. Okay. So moved. Moved by Dave O'Brien, second Cassie. And Don, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, the septic grant.
I think Sandy sent you an email this morning with a proposed resolution for the septic grant. Washington County was awarded a septic replacement grant from New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation in the amount of $250,000, which pays up to 50% of replacement costs for homeowners up to $10,000. And it's 2 different watersheds in Washington County that qualify.
Lake George and Casiuna, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that should include authorization to pay out of audit.
Okay,
Yes.
and so it's going to include authorization to pay out an audit, and that'll all be added when we go to the full board.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
so I
way
need a motion to move the septic grant.
Move it.
Moved by Cassie, seconded by Don. Okay, discussion, continue out.
What was that, Brian? I'm sorry, I missed you.
Continue, you started to say something.
No, I'm okay. I'm good.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, next is the authorize the RFP for the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act Services.
Okay, so what I'm asking the board for today is the ability for Melissa to go out to RFP for job training services. Those of you that have been here for a little while, you might remember that in 2017, LEAP, who does our job training services for the New York State Department of Labor. They went out and did an RFP directly with Saratoga County, and the county got out of the business. LEAP was dealing directly with Saratoga County. LEAP and Saratoga County have both reached out to me. They'd really prefer to go back to the way that it used to be done. It's cleaner under the Federal WIOA Act. It's cleaner for Saratoga County. Turns out it's even cleaner for LEAP to go back to the way that we used to do it. So the community development fund that was in the budget used to have like $600,000 in it instead of 70,000. This is that program that used to be in the community development fund. It's just going back to the way that we were doing things in 2017. But in order to do that, we then have to go out and RFP who's going to provide the service for us. Melissa will issue an RFP, and whoever answers, and we'll review those RFPs. It could be one vendor, it could be 5 vendors, but we have to RFP the service for that Job Training Partnership Act. So those of you that have been around and are of the gray hair as I am, will remember we used to call this program JTPA, and the board used to be called the WIB. Now it's the Workforce Development Board, and it's the WIOA federal legislation that funds the money. But it's basically job training services for the Department of Labor. It just changes the way. Right now, Saratoga, Warren, and Washington counties, the 3 counties together, are split this money from the feds. Saratoga County is the lead agency, and then they send the money out. And it's a lot cleaner to go back to the way that we used to do it, where the money flows through us to whoever our partner is. So the first step in that process is for Melissa to issue an RFP to see who our partner is going to be. It might be LEAP, it might be someone else. We'll see who responds.
So we tried something and found out what we were doing was better, and we're just headed back there.
It's interesting. We were actually more efficient before.
So I need a motion to authorize the RFP. Moved by Don Ward, second by Dave O'Brien. Any discussion from the board? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, was that it, Al?
For now.
Very good, thank you, sir.
You know, I always retain the right to run my mouth.
We'll call on you. Okay, so back to the budget amendments. We're on resolution D now. Capital project number 125 for the barn consolidation engineering study. Got moved by Dave O'Brien. Is there a second? Cassie Fedler. Any discussion on this? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution E is the DSS OFA Budget Consolidation Appropriations Act. It's just moving our money here. It's recognizing 100% of federal funds. Motion for that one. Moved by Cassie, second by John Rozell. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. F is to amend the budget to carry over the unspent COVID-19 funds. Looks like it's all public health. Motion to do that. Moved by Dave, second by Sue and Cassie. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution G, amend the budget for criminal justice discovery reform funding. This money here is this what's being moved to contingency? No.
Yes.
Yes, it's going to contingency. Okay, so is there any motion to move that? Kathy? Discussion, Don Ward? Okay, any discussion? Don seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. H is a standard workday resolution. This is for Dan Shaw. Motion. Moved by Dave O'Brien, second. Don Ward. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Carried. Resolution I is the supplemental mortgage tax disbursement. This is the extra money that Stephanie was good enough to make sure we got here a couple years back. Moved by Dave O'Brien, second by Kathy Fedler, Don Ward, John Rozell. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Then the actual mortgage tax warrant. Motion to move that. Moved by Kathy, second by John Rozell and Don Ward. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, J is the Security Grant Program Award. We received $50,000. 100% funds will be used to purchase tools assisting the county in strengthening our cybersecurity program at a time when we couldn't need it more. So moved by James Griffith, second by Kathy Fedler. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay. Now, we are on to electric charging stations. And I believe Ryan Blakely from ChargePoint is going to join us. Is that right, Melissa?
I actually think we're a little ahead of ourselves. We're not expecting him until about 11. So I don't know.
Okay.
We'll move on to the tourism. Laura Oswald is on.
That'd be great. Okay, Laura.
Good morning, everybody. So I forwarded to you at Brian's request copies of the two budgets that were discussed at the recent ag planning meeting, just to give you an idea or background as to why this is being done now. We typically, when we do budgeting in a year, we budget the county match portion of the tourism budget and then amend the budget in the early part of the following year to recognize revenue that's coming from the I Love New York program. Up until about a week ago, all our indications were we were going to be getting zero funding from I Love New York this year. But as of now, they are telling us that they are going to fund about approximately half of what our typical allocation would be, which is going to represent a $25,000 to $30,000 addition to the tourism budget. So right now, the tourism budget is set at $50,000 for the county match. It's typically $90,000, but because of COVID and because of other budget concerns, it was set at 50 last year, again, anticipating that those budget changes would be made in spring of this year. So this was moved to ag planning to discuss the fact that at a minimum, there are certain things that we would typically need to do to get through the year. And that budget actually represented less than the typical budget of about 150,000. However, given that this is a COVID year, and we've had substantial impact to the tourism industry, the discussion at ag planning reflected the fact that if there was ever a time to try and help the industry and do additional work, then it has to be now, because the summer tourism season effectively starts Memorial Day weekend. So the ask to this committee is to increase the tourism budget by $120,000 to get the total budget up to $200,000, because that would be the impact of the $50,000 that's currently there. An additional $25,000 to $30,000. We won't get the final numbers until probably early June on I Love New York, but it'll be somewhere between 25 to 30. And then an addition of 120,000. So in order to fund that, there are a couple of possibilities. We currently have $81,000 in total in the bed tax account. My first discussion was with the ag planning committee was to use the bed tax revenue, but our long-term plan had always been to try and bank that money so that over time we could decrease reliance on general funds. And because we now have an opportunity to use stimulus funds for which tourism promotion is eligible, It, to my mind, makes more sense. And obviously this has yet to go, it's been discussed briefly at the committee that's deciding on the use of the stimulus funding, but clearly it needs further discussion. It is one possibility in terms of the way of adding that, funding that $120,000, or, you know, again, we could take at least a portion of it from bed tax, but my preference would be to bank that and start using it in next year's budget. So again, you know, happy to take questions. The budget was provided simply as detail because those were the two budgets and the reasons discussed at ag planning for, you know, again, minimum use versus if we had the funding to really invest in and help businesses related to the tourism industry, that, you know, the higher budget is what the preference would be.
Can you tell us exactly, Laura, what you would be getting for 200,000 that you won't be getting for 130,000? I think that would be the biggest question to the board.
So essentially there is an expansion across a number of different categories. It would allow us to do some more social media. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to look at the County Tourism Facebook page, but we have started a series of promotional videos. The first one came out a couple of days ago. I would really love to do more of those, and those are sort of on the expensive side. So the increased budget would allow us to do more videography. One of the things that we have not spent any money on in several years is printed copies. We would really like to create some sort of a fairly simple piece of handout material, you know, a flyer kind of thing that can be used when we get requests from people who want some information about tourism in the county. Right now, the only thing that we have to send out is the old tourism map. We have had nothing printed for years. So all in all, it would allow us to create more content that could be used both this year and in the future. So it, you know, it's not just a one-time investment. We're looking at things that could be used for some time to come. And it would allow us to do more direct outreach on social media. And it would allow us to do more connecting with local businesses to ask them what they need in terms of assistance to try and get back on track, having been, you know, again, decimated by the you call it decapitation of the tourism industry given COVID, because it's clearly an industry that was badly hit.
So coming from that, I guess where I'm going to go here is, if we did this is kind of a one-time thing unless we try to sustain this year after year. So is that the idea, that we'll do extra now so we can go back to the regular budget?
Yes.
Okay.
My intention would be for the 2022 calendar year, our previous budget was 152,000. So I would anticipate targeting approximately that number for the 2022 budget. What I would also like to do, and I've said this since we started the discussion about the Airbnb revenue, is start taking a portion of the bed tax money to reduce reliance on county general funds. The bed tax isn't going to pay for all of it at this point, but you know, if the budget goes back to the normal number of 152 or so next year, it still will mean less money from the county general fund, because I would anticipate taking at least a little bit of that bed tax money towards the budget next year.
Okay, and is this year important because we're coming out of the pandemic and we're expecting more people to travel locally? Is that what's behind this? Is that where, I'm trying to get all the logic out of this.
Yes, all of the state, local, national research says that the industry is expecting exponential travel this year, especially to areas where there are outdoor recreation. And you know, you aren't in a confined area. Basically, you know, as the world begins to open up again, people are looking for places to go. day trips, which, you know, we are a very good day trip destination. The lack of hotels has obviously, you know, sort of impacted that. However, as we all know, Airbnb is growing exponentially and continuing to grow. So I would anticipate that we're going to see continued increase in overnight stays through Airbnb from further away destinations, and then day trips from, you know, local areas like Albany. And as the racetrack opens again this year, again, I would anticipate that we're going to see more and more visitation. So, you know, it's very unfortunate. We lost some hospitality businesses due to the COVID impact. There are many out there that are still suffering, and any boost that we could give them to get them back to some level of normal is what we want to try and do.
Okay, Dana Half.
Laura, in the budget, the revenue for bed tax is $68,000. What do you, you said take a little bit of that. How much are you talking about?
No, the current balance in the bed tax account is $81,000, not 68.
Well, that's the expenditure. No, I'm sorry. That's the revenue expected in this year, 68.
Al Nolat, you want to chime in?
Laura's talking about the money we have set aside in the reserve, Mr. Half.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Yeah, correct. That does not factor in additional revenue that will come in this year. That's just what's there right now.
Sue Clary.
Laura, I want to thank you for bringing this forward. I think that just looking at our mortgage tax and looking at the amount of property transfers that are happening in Washington County, a lot of people have moved in. As we wake up, you know, as a county, we want to keep them here. There are young people that are moving in. They want things to do. They want to go places. And we've been kind of sleepy for the past year. So to do things like the map is a great idea. That'll be probably another situation where you can get them and they may last for the next 5 years. So it's an expense that will occur just once until you do it again. And also there's a lot of new technology with like TikTok, YouTube, and ways to engage, which Jimmy Griffith knows more about that than I do because he's talked about it before. I'm just another gray-haired lady that likes to have young people here. So there's a lot we can do. And I think we need to wake up strong. So I commend you for bringing this to the board. And that is what this recovery is about, is the tourism, helping businesses, getting reestablished and finding our new normal. So good job.
Al Nolat.
Brian, for you and Laura, I wouldn't mind if we considered two separate conversations. So to me, there's kind of two things going on. There's Laura's normal operating budget for tourism. And then there's the stimulus money that's coming in that's been made available as of Monday. So we could in theory separate those conversations, because in my mind, her regular operating budget, we need to kind of get some kind of, you know, level water field there. And she might actually end up doing better with the working group having that conversation be separate. The 120 she's looking for might be shooting a little bit low. That group might be willing to spend a little bit more in reintroducing Washington County to the world. So you could in theory defer the stimulus part of the conversation to the committee. And if the $130,000 of operating money is like her bare minimum to get through this year, you could take 40,000 of the contingency that you just put 178,000 into, 30,000 of the state aid, and then you would only have to tap 10,000 of the bed tax money. That 40,000 would bring your county contribution to the 90 that it should be. See what I'm saying? So you could get her to the 130 very easily, and then have a different conversation about what you want to do in addition to that from the stimulus money, if that makes any sense.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of on board with you, but I was going to take it a step further. I think with the stimulus money, when we moved it here, we thought we were going to get guidance a lot sooner than we did, whereas it just came. Because the contingency has grown so much just today, $193,000, I guess I would say we still have the two budgets in play. But if instead of using stimulus money, we could use stimulus money even in tourism next year. It wouldn't have to be this year. But I think she needs the budget now to move forward with whatever the plan is. So I guess I would look at contingency if we want to do the bigger budget, bed tax if we want to do the smaller budget. But I'm going to put it out to the board to decide whether they want the bigger budget or they want the smaller budget. I guess that's where I'd go. But I think it's obtainable either way, and if you're ever going to do it, this is probably the year because we're probably not going to be in this shape again for a few. James Griffith.
Thanks, Brian. So, coming out of COVID, we got a lot of businesses that are reliant on tourism in our area. As Laura said, Airbnb is going to continue to increase. We're seeing a very good windfall in the occupancy tax money, and I think 68,000 is a low ball figure on what we're going to realize on that sales tax, the occupancy tax revenue this year for Airbnb. I think we owe it to our communities, businesses that rely on that tourism to get them the awareness. This is a year you're going to see more tourists in our region, and we need to continue to push on that. So I feel that we need to move forward and go with the larger budget, right now, and give Laura the amount of money to be able to move forward and put plans into place before the summer season starts. This is May. This is the May meeting. If we wait till June, we're farther behind in production for our fall foliage season and the end of the year season. So I'm in favor of the 200,000 spend.
And that's kind of where I was going, is this is going to be like our trial period as to what works and what doesn't work. And that's why I was saying next year might be when we want stimulus money in there, because if we see something that's a gaping hole that we need to fill because it's really paying off, that might be where we want to go in the following year. Kathy?
I was going to say everything that Jim said, but if he was making a motion to go with a $200,000 budget, I would second that.
I'll motion that.
Okay, so I have a motion by James, a second by Cassie, and a question from Mr. Hanky.
Well, not a question so much as a statement. I'm pretty much in favor of the larger budget too. I think this is the time to do it. I think it would be a bad thing to try and obligate any stimulus money at this point. We've got a working group working on this and figuring out, what our priorities are. We haven't heard any of the other priorities from as of yet. I think we ought to fund it. I think we ought to go ahead with it, but I think we ought to keep the stimulus out of the conversation right now.
Okay. I think that's where we've kind of taken it.
Yeah, I think we've come around to that.
I think they have Sue Cleary. Did you have your hand up, Sue? Okay. Dave O'Brien.
So one of the topics at the Economic Task Group recovery that Jim and I sit on, Warren County, is the fact that tourists are coming up here, the reservations are up. They've got a lot of people come up. What they're looking to do is capitalize on that, to convert from tourism and convert people into moving up here, and some of the thrust they're looking at. So I think it's important we try and capture as much of that as we possibly can through our process. And certainly the larger budget will help us attract those, because we got a few more residents coming up here. That's beneficial to us also.
So now it's just how we fund the bigger budget, if that's where we want to go. Alan, I'll let back to you.
So one thing I wanted to mention to Mr. Griffith's point, because he's not wrong, you gotta think that in the first quarter of the year, first 4 months of the year, we're almost at 39,000. So if that trend continues, you got to think we're over 100,000 in bed tax money this year. So what you could do to fund part of it, Brian, is take that 68, and if you raise the 68 to even 90, That funds 22,000 of what you need right there.
Okay, run that by me again. I want to get the numbers right.
Right, so you got 68 in the budget right now for the occupancy tax.
Yep.
If you bump that up to 90, which I still think is probably conservative, that difference right there can fund some of the 200,000.
So if we bump that up, would be 22, basically she would need 98 more out of a different fund, and that could be contingency. And then we can leave what's being stored in the unreserved funds for later. Is that where we're at?
I think that's a great idea.
Is that doable for you, Laura? Is that fine?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Brian?
now it's back to what the board wants to do. Dana,
Brian, what's the new number from 68,000? What's the new number you anticipate in revenue? 90,000?
Al said 90, so it's 22,000 more.
All right, the previous budget, it was 18,000. So we guesstimated an increase of 50,000. But we were kind of thankfully wrong by a factor of 2, right?
Yeah, there was just partially a part of a year in there in Airbnb too. It's just a few months. And so now we're kind of getting a little history as to what it's going to be. James Griffin.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Brian. So Dana, there's a little bit of history in the Airbnb. We only started in September and October is when we got our first checks. Those are somewhat busy times of the year, but May, June, July, August, and especially July and August, the amount of money that we're going to receive on bookings for that is going to be double what we received in September and October. So the anticipation is that we're going to see a lot more revenue coming through the pipeline in the next couple of months, May and June, for bookings for July and August.
But James, don't you think this quarter is going to have a severe downturn if people can't drive here due to the gasoline situation?
I think you're going to have more local, Dana. I've already, so just an example, this week, I opened up bookings for July and August at the property. I increased the length of stay. So from last year, I did 2-night length of stay to a 4-night. The 8 weeks in July and August, I just booked 4 weeks in the last week. So and the money's there. I think, you know, I'm seeing more higher, longer stays at the same rate that I was getting last year. And I'm speaking for myself, but I comparable to what the percentages are telling me that people are looking at in the market, it's up 175 to 225% based on certain days in those months. So I'm still, and same with Warren County on the calls that Dave and I are on. Warren County has already seen an increase in their bookings, and those people are not going to. I don't think the gas prices are going to affect those people. Those people are coming from Connecticut, New Jersey, New York City, Long Island. You know, they're coming from major metropolitan areas with sizable disposable income.
They might have to drive here to get fuel.
Well, it's not a shortage of fuel. It's the perception that increases the price. But if James says they have disposable income and they don't really care, then it's a moot point.
Well, it helps our businesses. That's a good part of it. So the way I've got it written is there'd be 20, if it's what was it, 120,000 you wanted, Laura, I believe?
Yes.
So if it's 120,000 we have to come up with, I'd say 22,000 is increased revenue, and the 98,000 would come from contingency. So, is there anyone else on the board? Dana, go again.
Brian, don't you also have to amend the expense side of the budget? I think the expense, if I can.
Well, that's her $200,000 budget. That's where we're going. That's what we're working on.
But the expense is only 55,000. You're going to make that 200,000?
Well, the expense is only the 150, Dana. The 5,000 is for boards and councils. So Brian, you actually need 150. 30,000 of which is state aid.
Well, 30 is, well, but she's already got that in her budget. I mean, she's already wrote that on paper. I'm thinking, I was just going things that aren't written down there.
Right, I mean, for your budget amendment, you need 150.
Yes. Well, if they had the 30 from the I Love New York or whatever it is.
This is-
it'll be 25 to 30.
This is line 6411 in the budget, page 64. Is that what you're talking about, Al?
Sorry, Mr. Half?
Are you talking about in the budget, the expense line 6411 on
Yes,
page
sir.
64?
Yes, sir.
So that 55,000 is going to increase to what?
That's gonna end up being 205. It's 50,000 right now for the program and 5,000 for boards and councils. That 50,000 is gonna go to 200,000.
All right, boards and councils, that's that mysterious thing that nobody ever knew about. What page, what?
No, Dana,
No.
sorry, the 5,000 is an allocation to Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Right,
It's additional funding to them to help us do agritourism. So it was put into the tourism budget, but in a separate line. It's not part of the regular budget. It's just extra funding to Cornell. It's not
It's
boards
separate.
and councils.
it's separate from what we're talking about today.
Right.
Right,
What is boards and councils in the budget? Is that underneath planning?
Not any longer.
Where is it?
now, we have a separate department now for the regional planning board, is what you're thinking, Mr. Happ.
All right, where is boards and councils in the budget?
It's 8,000 something, I can check for you.
Well, planning is 8020, so it's near there, right? All right, never mind about me. Please continue.
Okay, so if we want to make this easy and we're saying it's between 25 and 30 and we don't really know, let's go 22, 100, and 28. And that way we're still at 150,000 and we should hit all those numbers. Does that make it very simple for everyone?
No.
Well, and then it's still going to be according to what the I Love New York number is, but that way if we're short, at least the money's still there. Okay. Are we ready to vote, or is there any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Is there anyone opposed? Carried. Okay. Now, Melissa, is Ryan now available?
Yes, Ryan is on. Ryan is here
Okay.
from
Yeah,
ChargePoint.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Ryan.
Thank you for joining us today, Ryan. I guess what we're looking for is just some information on the charge stations. I sent you some questions yesterday that maybe have come up, and if you could just kind of give us some information so we can just become a little more informed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did get some of those questions, so I'm happy to address some of those out of the gate if helpful. Otherwise, I do have a handful of slides prepared just to give a bit of an overview on the market and some of the current incentives that are available, if that would be helpful. A new one just recently hit as well, so that might be new for some folks. So
Yeah, if you'll start with your presentation first, Ryan, and then we'll go through questions, please.
Yep, you got it. So let me know if you can see my screen, please.
There we go, we're here.
All right, perfect. All right, just for a quick intro for me, so I'm Ryan Bakley. I'm a sales director with ChargePoint. Certainly appreciate your time today to let me participate in this meeting. I'll try and keep it short and sweet, but I want to make sure we answer your questions that you have. I've been with ChargePoint for 6 years, covering the entire state of New York as well as New Jersey. Put in hundreds of municipal and government, actually probably thousands at this point, municipal and government charging stations, as well as all of our other applications that we're involved with. So as I mentioned, I'll just touch on the market briefly, and then answer some questions at the end if there are any, and get into the incentives that are available. Certainly an exciting time to be looking at stations. ChargePoint, we started in 2007, have grown to be the market leader. We're about 80% of the overall market. Besides station count, just about every driver has an account with us at this point. We're in the glove compartment of the vehicles. When you buy one, you download our app, and then you can see where all of our available public stations are. So from a county's perspective, if you have these at public parks or just public parking locations, you're essentially become a pin on our broad network that drivers are, you know, kind of brings them to your location, or they know that you have them there so they could charge up while they're in town or just while they're visiting that particular location. We're also integrated with the navigation systems and such. Here's a snapshot of our footprint in New York. Total is about 7,000 stations, which we're excited about. Let's see. So from a market perspective, you know, 2025 is a key milestone. You'll see some stats here for about 2040, but you know, 2025 is much closer. And pretty much every major manufacturer has announced by 2025 about all their vehicles are going to have a plug. And that'll be a combination of plug-in hybrids, all electric vehicles and everything. And you're probably seeing more and more commercials for them. If you watch the Super Bowl, there was a bunch of commercials there, but it's certainly, you know, the OEMs have adopted EV charging technology, and many states, New York and New Jersey included, so some East Coast states, as well as, you know, what they're doing in California and other countries. You know, there's bills out there that by 2035, you're not going to be able to sell gas vehicles anymore. So the market is really shifting in this direction, and there's already mandates to start converting fleets over to electric as well. So great time to be looking and considering, you know, infrastructure, charging infrastructure opportunities. The model itself has really changed from the gas, you know, kind of concept and mindset, you know, where you would let your tank run down close to empty and then you go to a gas station and fill up. It's really more of a top off type model, similar to maybe how you operate with your cell phone. You know, as you're kind of going different places, you plug in, you charge up for a little bit. It's a very similar concept. There might be some EV drivers on the call here. I'm one. It's kind of how you operate. You leave your house with a full charge and then you kind of top off where you go. And from a county perspective, you know, there's a couple, you know, different use cases. It could be at, you know, public county owned, you know, property, parks and things of that nature where people are coming to charge up. Could be at county facilities that could be used by both the public as well as employees. And then there's also a fleet component. So, you know, counties are really great use cases because they cover a couple different types of applications across deployment and help support this EV model and this kind of new fueling network that we're building out. From an incentive standpoint, you know, New York is probably one of the hottest markets in the country right now, where there's a joint utility program, which I'll get into on the next slide, and joint utility make ready program, which helps cover the installation costs. NYSERDA has a current rebate, $4,000 per charging plug. The tax credits necessarily wouldn't apply from a county perspective, but just on the private side, there's entities that could take advantage of tax credits. There's some DC fast charging incentive. And then the latest, which I'll get into, that just launched end of April, is New York Department of Environmental Conservation just re-upped funding about $2.5 million into funding that's specific for counties and other government entities as well, which could be a interesting opportunity for you guys. So the Make Ready program was launched, went live this past October, but the Public Service Commission basically put a mandate July of 2020 for all the utilities, all the joint utilities in New York to put together a Make Ready program. And that's the installation from the service point to where the stations would go. And it's pretty significant funding. You know, it's a $700 million budget. And here's the breakdown by utilities. You know, the overall target by 2025 is 53,000 level 2 chargers and 1,500 DC fast chargers. But to put it in perspective, you know, charge points, you know, the goal by the end of this year is to get 10,000 stations in. We have 7,000 of them are charge point stations. So, so say we have less than 10,000 stations currently. And, you know, in the next couple of years, want to get up to 53,000 across the state. So that's significant. And then it's just broken down by utility. But the percentages are really, really impressive. So there's a couple different buckets of opportunity. 90% coverage would be if it's open to the public for public access. So it has to be an appropriate location where that's suitable. But if it is open to the public with no restrictions, then it's 90% of that cost covered. If it is restricted access, then you're looking at 50% of that install cost covered. And in certain scenarios, targeting DC fast charging and level 2 for multifamily, it could be up to 100% make ready coverage if you're within a mile or two of a environmental justice community or low to moderate income community. Then NYSERDA, as I mentioned, there's that $4,000 per port incentive. You are able to stack these two programs. So just to give a recent example, not a county, but University of Buffalo, or University at Buffalo, I should say, just recently went through this program. They participated in with National Grid as well as NYSERDA, and you get close to, I don't remember their exact percentage, but based on what other customers have done, sometimes it's 90 or very close to 100% of costs covered between these two programs. Hate to say 100%, but we can get there in some scenarios, depending on installs and stuff. But it is a really exciting opportunity, and this funding's going quick. I just took this screen grab from NYSERDA's website last week. So you see $6.1 million left. I did this a month ago. It was $6.5 million. So a lot of us feel that this $6 million will likely be gone by the end of this calendar year. Not sure if it will be refunded, but just something to keep in mind that if there is interest, now's a great time to look into it and get an application in if there's any interest in exploring that opportunity. And I could address questions on that at the end. And then the last program I wanted to get into is because it's a new one. It's like the third round, I believe, of this particular opportunity. And this is for level 2 in DC, and it could be up to for county. So you guys would be a qualified application where it's 80 to 100% of the project cost covered. You'll see some caps here on the right-hand side. So I know this is a lot of info. So if there's interest, we can certainly get into the weeds or set a follow-up on the specifics. I just want to give a kind of broad strokes on these opportunities. But this one would be specific to an entity like yourself, $250K per facility or $500,000 per entity. So this could have some significant coverage on both level 2 and DC fast charging if there's interest. This just launched like April 23rd, as I mentioned here, and applications are due by October 29th. But this is something new that I haven't reviewed with the county to date yet. So something to consider, and I'll send this afterwards so you have the details. This I kind of touched on. So municipalities, counties, cities, towns, really public sector is what this is targeting. Eligible costs for coverage are, personal services, the charging equipment itself. Cloud is the software component, the network. They'll cover up to 2 years of that network subscription. ChargePoint Assure is the maintenance of this. So there's uptime guarantees, 24-hour monitoring. So the warranty and maintenance for a 2-year period, installation costs, utility upgrades. If you're willing to not charge for the power, they'll actually cover your energy costs for up to 2 years. If you're not charging a fee at the station, and shipping. So you can see the bulk of the costs really involved in putting a station in could be 80 to 100% covered for the county. And last nuance on that is that the install has to be completed by the 23rd. That's really the key point there. And last thing I wanted to highlight is that we do have, New York State contracts. So if there is interest in taking a deeper dive on some of these programs and there is a decision to move forward, ChargePoint does have a New York State contract that counties and municipalities have been leveraging for the past few years, and certainly something you guys are able to leverage, if there's interest in this. But I know I said a lot there. I mean, that's the incentives in a nutshell. But if there's some specific questions, I want to make sure I address the concerns, because I know you guys have been looking at this for a little bit. So some of this might have been reviewed, but wanted to make sure, especially with the DEC grant being new, wanted to make sure that was on your radar. But I'd love to answer any specific questions. I have a list from an email here, but I didn't know if, I'll pause there just for some questions.
Okay, maybe if I can see there a screen now, if you can get rid of PowerPoint there, Ryan, just so I can see everybody, and we can go ahead with questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully that was,
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I touched on some of that stuff.
Right, no, but I didn't know if there was anybody else had questions first.
Well, I was just thinking that, if he went through his questions, some of the questions everyone else had would be covered by those.
Okay. I have one question before you start on the list of questions. On the warranty part, we know that under the state bid, you have to have the 5-year warranty and the 5-year software. So is on that last rebate, would they pay for 2 of that, so we would only have to pay 3 years of those? Is that right?
That is correct. We are going to have a clarifying question out to them just because they do have a 5-year kind of, that uptime and requirement. But the way it's stated today is that they're covering 2 of those 5 years. So you would be responsible for 3 years under that last program. That's correct.
Okay, that's interesting. Day and a half.
What the heck is environmental justice?
I don't speak on the exact definition of that, but based on how it's going, we're doing a lot with this across statewide. A lot of it's either like low to moderate income communities, or they just refer to it different words like that. But what's good is that on the utility websites themselves, they actually have maps. So it shows you where these communities are. So if you if you have a location within a mile, it depends on the utility. So it's either a mile or sometimes 2 miles of one of those, low to moderate income community zones, then you could be eligible for up to 100% coverage. I'm happy to dig up the map for your county and share that with you guys.
Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, so environmental justice zones are designated by the state. Unfortunately, however, they are based on old data. Right now, the only environmental justice area we have in the county is Fort Ann. It's likely, and as Ryan referred to, it's based on low income or unserved populations. My own interpretation is that the reason it ended up being Fort Ann is because of Comstock metrics.
Okay, and we are an opportunity zone here, which is totally different.
Correct. They're very different.
It's one of those terms that means whatever the person using it at the time means. But since the state has actually defined it, then you have to go with the state definition. It's meant to make up for places like landfills, waste processing things that were traditionally cited in places where other people didn't want them, which were generally low income, poorer areas. And so the idea is to make up for the past issues about citing those things there by citing things that are now helpful rather than detrimental to those areas. But again, that's the general theory of it, but you have to look at the definition of whatever program you're operating under. And as Laura says, we're stuck with that definition.
So, Ryan, I guess go through the questions and answer them as best you can.
Okay, great. Yeah, so one of the questions I saw was related to the charging technology and if it's able to charge all the vehicles in the market. So there's two. Some of you might know this, but there's 2 levels of charging in this commercial or space. One is called level 2. That's an industry term. I know it's not really fancy, but it's called level 2 charging. That's your most common install you see out there. To put it in perspective, that adds about 25 miles of range in an hour of charging. All the vehicles in the market have standardized on level 2 charging plugs. Not to get too far into the weeds, but it's called J1772. That's the actual charging plug. And the only one that has a proprietary plug is Tesla. But with a Tesla, when you buy one, it comes with a little 4-inch adapter that allows you to charge on our station. So we charge a lot of Tesla stations. So to answer the question is, yes, we can charge every vehicle available on the market. There's just that one little nuance with Tesla, but that adapter comes with the car and Tesla drivers are doing it all the time. So it's not an issue for them. On DC fast charging, which is a different animal, that's where you get into high voltage charging, 483 phase. To put it in perspective, that's where instead of 25 miles, you're adding, 200, 250 plus miles of range in an hour of charging. So those are good for a long key corridor location, service station, something more along the lines of a gas station type model. Where you're only going to be there for 15, 20 minutes and need significant charge on a trip, or for fleet applications if you have a vehicle that needs to get turned over quick. Actually behind me, that's the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, that's supporting their shuttle bus fleet at Newark. This is Newark Airport behind me. But with DC, there's 2 standards. So our station will have 2 plugs on it because it accommodates both standards. So hopefully that answered that question. Any comments on that? Okay, great. Next was if you are charging a fee at the station, how is that managed? So I had said earlier, just about every driver has an account with us. Part of having an account is having a credit card on file. Picture it similar to something like Easy Pass. They create an account, all that's free. They download our app, that's free. They upload a credit card, and as they're using various stations across our network, at their workplace, at a county facility or wherever, if there's a fee at that station, we collect that fee from the driver. We deposit it into the station owner's account. The station owner, with our guidance, but they ultimately control it, the station owner sets the price at the station. ChargePoint will manage the transaction. If you guys purchase it, you would set the price and you would get 90% of all revenue collected at the station. We deposit it monthly or quarterly. So to answer the question is that, it's paid for by a credit card. Most drivers have an account, but say you're the 20% or 10%, whatever it is these days, that don't have a ChargePoint account because you've just only charged at your house for whatever reason. You are able to use, a credit card, contactless credit card, or there's an 800 number that they can call and unlock a charging station. So we can answer it all, but it's all usually via credit card. And, we're linked with all Apple and Google, all the different pay mechanisms. We're integrated with all them. So there's a lot of different ways to do that transaction. The most common though is using our app. You just hold your phone up to the station, and then it takes it from there.
Okay, off of that, Ryan, a couple of questions. The ones that would be our fleet cars though, you get no money out of that, only the software and the warranty.
That's right. If it's the fleet, that I was going to go there next because there was a question about.
Okay, I didn't know it was the next one.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. So led right into it. That was perfect timing. Because with fleet, so we would set up it really depends on, if these are going to be exclusive for fleet or kind of a mixed use, which is what I recommend maybe using for employees during the day and then, fleet overnight to really help with that utilization. We would have a separate driver group for your fleet. So the station itself would recognize that vehicle that's getting plugged in is a fleet vehicle. So there would be no pricing policies. But where I was going to go was that, say, on the fleet side, you might just similar to like a gas vehicle, like WEX or something like that, using a fleet fueling card. If you have a charging electric vehicle and you had to take a trip somewhere or visit another county or some kind of a state meeting going down Albany or whatever the case may be, and had a charge on a station that you don't own, and there's a fee at that station, how do you manage that transaction? So we have integrations with fuel card companies like Voyager, WEX. WEX seems to be the largest, but so we can manage that transaction very similar to how a gas vehicle fuel card would operate because it is with WEX. So there's a lot of integrations we can do on the fleet side, even with telematic systems and all that stuff. So a lot of areas, So does that answer the question, Brian, or do you want me to take?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay. Yeah, fleet's a different animal, and we're experts in it. Some of the largest fleets in the country are our clients. Here in New York, some of our largest fleet customers are the city of New York. They have thousands of our stations supporting thousands of their EVs. Port Authority behind me, it's not just bus fleet. They have a large light duty fleet as well. We have probably 150, 200 stations there. Albany County, other counties around. So we have a lot of experience here locally, as well as nationally. I'm just trying to give some local examples. So happy to support there.
Dan Shaw has a question.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand all this. Tell me, do you charge a fee for doing this for us if we have a charging station open to the public?
So the county would buy the stations from us. There's a network cost for for having like this software component, like an annual network cost. Through these current incentives, though, a lot of these costs are covered for a period of time. If you're asking about a fee for like if you're charging a fee at the station, we collect, you set pricing at the station. Like if you wanted to charge cents a kilowatt hour, or whatever it is, we'll collect that fee from the driver and you get 90% of the revenue. So if we are managing a transaction for you, we hold back 10% of whatever that revenue is. If there's no fee at a station though, there is no transaction fee. It's only if we manage a transaction for you that there's a fee. Does that answer the question? I just want to make sure.
Yes. Yeah. You charge a fee for any transaction to the public.
Yep, but if it's a free station, then there's no transaction fee. And that just covers our, admin costs. And we take on the risk too. So if there is a dispute or anything like that, we usually just wait it off. You guys stay whole, we'll pay you regardless. And we deal directly with the drivers. And if their card declines or something like that, we handle that. And we have to maintain what's called PCI compliance to manage these credit card transactions and all that. And while we're on this topic, what comes up a lot, especially in the government side, is data security. So how our stations connect to the cloud is all via cell signal, which is the most secure way of doing it. So we don't have to go and tap into any of your local networks or any of that stuff. So anyway, I don't know if that's more information you needed, but that comes up a lot or would eventually. But from a security standpoint, we take that very serious and have, the most secure stations currently.
Thank you.
The last question I had here was regarding, was there a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
I was just kind of considering the if you build it, they will come concept for these things right now. And looking on your app, I see you've got a charging station over in town of Moreau, or just across the border in Saratoga County. You got any idea what kind of volume they have of people coming in there wanting to use the service?
Not off the top of my head, but I do have access to that info. Which station was it?
It's in Moreau. See if I can find it again here.
Yeah,
I
I can take a look and get a sense and circle back with the group on kind of
just across the river from us.
Okay, yeah, I can follow up on that. I can see what kind of utilization they're getting. But just as a whole, like just where the market's going, is that like in just, less than, in about 4 years, maybe less than 4 years at this point, every vehicle on the market is really going to have a plug as part of it. So they anticipated going from just, a couple percentage of sales right now to, 25% sales are going to be electric vehicles by 2025. And what's great is that, especially like being upstate New York and stuff where we have weather, it's like not everybody, some people need an SUV or a truck or car, those are the vehicles that are coming out now. So it's really going to be able to, for some of those folks that were waiting on that, those SUVs and pickup trucks and things with 4-wheel drive are finally here. So even the Jeep Wrangler is now a plug-in hybrid. I think that's live now. That's a new one. But yeah, I'll pull some of that utilization data for you. Happy to help.
Dave O'Brien. So just a observation over the weekend, I happened to be visiting the local Toyota dealership in Rutland, and they had 8 Prius Primes on the lot on Saturday. By Monday, they had 2. So it looks like people are, I don't know what it's.
You bought 6 cars over there?
No, I only bought 2.
Yeah, but we'll wait.
But it does go to say that the demand for electric cars or hybrid electric plug-ins is really rising. So I think, I don't know, what New York State saying they want to have a deadline for moving to electric cars or what. So it was an observation that really hit home to a change in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I didn't touch on all that, but one of my slides, I highlighted kind of our snapshot where there's 60, almost 70,000 electric vehicles in the state of New York right now. When I started a little less than 6 years ago, it was like 14,000, just to put it in perspective. And it's going to start growing faster than that, more now than ever, now that all these different types of models are coming out. There's also incentives through just on the purchase side of this. There's incentives like rebates from NYSERDA when you buy a vehicle. There's also federal tax credits, like this is for personal use too. There's some fleet programs out there as well. But on the personal side, just as a general person, for your own personal vehicle, there's rebates through NYSERDA, and there's tax credits. Like when I have a Prius Prime, like you mentioned, and I bought mine a few years back, but I got a $4,500 back just from the federal government for buying it. So those programs still exist, which make it really attractive. I think all in, just for buying an electric vehicle, I got a $4,500 rebate and then a $4,500 tax credit. So I mean, it's $10,000 off right there. So it makes it really attractive. The last question I had here, and happy to answer more, but the last one I had noted here was regarding reporting. So part of that network and software platform that I mentioned is a lot of data, a lot of reporting. We keep it simple though. Like as soon as you log in, there's going to be a dashboard that pops up that gives you all the key metrics you're mostly going to care about. And then if you ever on an annual basis had to do a dig in and do a report over the course of a year to look at trends of energy costs or revenue or just utilization trends and all that, you have access to that with our help too. We'll train you and do it for you and provide all that support. But once you log in, I mean, the key metrics are going to be utilization, of course, like how often it's being used, how many different drivers are using it. So unique drivers is how we word it. What your energy costs are, your revenue, so you can make sure your pricing policy is offsetting your costs there. Greenhouse gas savings, so there's some sustainability reporting as well. So greenhouse gas savings, how many trees it equates to saving, that kind of stuff. A key one is charging session versus charging versus like session time. So a session is how long you're plugged in. So there's a good metric to know if your pricing policy is working, or it shows like, if you're plugged in for 2 hours, but if you're charging for 2 hours, but plugged in for 10 hours, that's, 8 hours of idle time. If it was a workplace, you may want to increase your rate or have some kind of encouragement to get them off the station after say 3 or 4 hours. But anyway, those are some of the highlights of the key metrics. So costs, utilization, revenue, that kind of stuff, energy consumption, all the key things you want to think about. And then there's also on the fleet side, there'd be a separate fleet tab if you were using this for fleet, so you can see where your vehicles are actively charging and collect data on them as well. But those are essentially the questions I had noted here, but happy to answer more if there are some. I want to be respectful.
Ryan, I want you to look into the future, 15 years to 2035, when you say there will be no more gas or diesel vehicles produced. We have snowplow trucks that probably carry 20 tons on them. These are 15-yard trucks, overloaded, all of them. Plowing a big load, going uphill, hauling that weight. At our satellite barns throughout the county, where the County Department of Public Works has these trucks, all of them are going to have three-phase power at that location. How on earth do you plow 12 hours with such a heavy truck?
Yeah, a lot of this is happening right now. I'm doing pilots with the city of New York. Department of Sanitation has all electric Mack garbage trucks. So some of these pilots, so those types of vehicles do exist, but there's a lot more development that has to be done. But these types of pilots are happening, and as far as handling the loads and all that stuff, electric motors are going to be able to handle that fine, and the ranges are getting longer. And those types of vehicles are coming out. I'm doing a lot of yard tractor work and things like that. So these vehicles are live today or are coming in the very near future, as well as large tractor trailers. We're doing a bunch of stuff with, PepsiCo and Frito-Lay, all those guys and stuff. So, these vehicles do exist. And part of it too is with these utilities are getting involved, which is why they have some of these make-ready programs and things of that nature, where part of that coverage, does include bring more power to a location. They'll be willing to bring up to 2 megawatts of power from a service upgrade standpoint. So that's one of the reasons why they have these, and that mandate was put in place from the Public Service Commission, is to start getting this infrastructure ready for what's coming.
But you need three-phase power in order to supply 480 volts.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I missed that part of the question. Yeah, they do require 483 phase. That's correct. So if they're not 3-phase there, a step-up transformer, things like that. We have a team that can evaluate what would need to be done to get it where it needs to be. But yeah, the DC does run on 3-phase.
Is there such a thing as a rapid charge for such a large truck? Because your garbage trucks that you talk about, fleet vehicles, they have downtime, off hours. If you're plowing in the middle of a snowstorm, you can't stop the truck for 6 hours to charge. You have to continual plowing.
Yep. So part of that is the ranges of these vehicles being able to support that type of mileage on a day and all that. But then also, having that fast charging turnaround. So we have technology that's coming out later this year. So well before 2035 is capable, not that vehicles can handle this much power, but they're capable of delivering 500 kW out of a single port. And to put it in perspective, that's where you get like being like a gas station. You pull up, you get 300 miles in 5 minutes, kind of thing. So all that charging technology will be there. It's just a matter of getting the vehicles there to be able to handle that kind of power.
Ryan, this is a little far afield and it's not really to do with the charging stations, but I understand that the mileage range, because you talk about range, dramatically decreases as soon as you turn on the heater, because the heater is powered by the battery. So if you want heat in your car in the wintertime, your range just got cut 20, 30, 40%.
Yep. AC as well in the summertime, the opposite. So anything electric that you're turning on in the vehicle does impact your range. You start to find that sweet spot though, but these ranges are getting larger, you know, where it's 300 plus 400. I just saw one that's projecting for 500 miles of range. So, but you're right. I mean, that's something to factor in. And on the fleet side, and we have a team that's part of the analysis that we do this with, based on your fleet mix, the type of vehicles, what kind of range are they doing, factoring in some of that climate impacts on that range. You know, we do that kind of an analysis. Light duty fleets are pretty straightforward, but you know, when you start to get into the heavier, you know, medium and heavy duty vehicles, a bit of a different animal, but we can certainly help support that. And we have a team of engineers to assist.
Thank you.
Matt Hicks?
Brian, you talked about waiving that annual cost. How long is that waived for? And then when it does kick in, would be the approximate annual cost to maintain these things?
So, I mean, it depends on, you know, to speak at like one station or simple, and then we can, you know, talk scale and annual, depending on, I'm trying to think of the easiest way to explain it. So ballpark numbers, the annual cost per charging port for the network would be, say, $300 to $330 per year, something like that per charging plug. You know, maintenance would be something like $500 to say $700 per year per station, something along those lines. So annual cost about $1,000, maybe about $1,000. Maintenance is not required, but it's just typically done just for the uptime guarantee, especially in fleet scenarios where it's mission critical to make sure that these things, I mean, our stuff's reliable, but you know, stuff does happen sometimes, you know, so having them up and running and there's uptime guarantees with SLAs in place, you know, financial penalties against us if we're not meeting that. But it's certainly not a charge point requirement to have our maintenance program. It's just a common best practice. But, you know, I would say annual cost per station, ballpark on average would be $750 to $1,000. Why there's a range is because there's different levels. If you buy a few years up front, there's some discounting and all that stuff. So just to give you a ballpark, if that's helpful.
Per charging station or per plug, which is 2 per station?
So the maintenance piece, that 500 to 750-ish range, that would be per station. Even if it's a dual port, it's just per station, so 1 unit. The network, the software cost, that 300 to 330 that I mentioned, is per charging plug. So if it's a dual port station, so a single unit with 2 plugs, that would be a quantity of 2. Reason being is that from the software standpoint, and when you're looking at the data, it's all at the port level. So it's technically like having 2 stations. It's just out of a single unit. Make sense?
Yep. Okay, to go off of that then, Ryan, a couple of questions. The first one is, the maintenance is, basically it's an electrical box as far as the maintenance that you're talking about. So our buildings and grounds could do that actual maintenance, or that isn't possible? I guess that's a question I need to know the answer to.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like preventative maintenance, like cleaning it and things like that, I guess can be done. It's more so, I mean, some of the biggest wear and tear is the cables, of course, right? Because that's what's getting constantly used.
And that's what I mean. Is that something we can change or no?
Yeah, I mean, you can handle some of that stuff in-house if you're trained or kind of start doing that work, and you just buy the parts as needed if needed, you know. But you know, fleet, these things get used quite often. But it holds up well. All of our stuff's anodized aluminum. It never rusts. It's meant for all extreme temperatures, cold and hot and all that stuff. And the cords have a retractor mechanism, so they're not left on the ground where you have to manually wrap it up like some of our competitors, or just how stations were, you know, have been to date. Ours have a nice retractor system, so it keeps it off the ground. So a lot of that's kind of managed by the station. But sometimes just technical pieces, or if a part does break, a clip or something accidentally gets damaged or hit by a vehicle, things like that. Because when you plug with our maintenance program, when you plug it, as soon as you plug in to start charging a vehicle, we're pinging it every 10 seconds to make sure everything is working appropriately, all that kind of stuff. If we catch it, it goes on a watch list. We have about 100 people in Arizona on the support team that would be, tasked with monitoring and managing the stations. If it's something they can't reboot or reset or do something remotely, we'll dispatch a truck, and have somebody come out there. If we have to replace a part, it's full parts and labor, no additional cost. It's just kind of that set it and forget it. But that is something if you wanted to manage in-house, but if a part broke or something like that, then you would just have to buy the part and you could do the labor yourself. So, we're open to exploring opportunities to fit within budgets, and it's not a requirement to use our maintenance program. It's just commonly used.
Well, that sounds interesting because that means we would not even monitor it because when it's broke before we do.
Yep, it's all proactive monitoring, proactive dispatch. We would want point people for each site where these stations are. And if we happen to catch something, we would reach out to them and say, hey, we noticed this. We just want to come over and check it out. And then we have a long list of local O&M partners that would be dispatched to come on site and do a repair or check out the station.
Okay, now back to the portal. We don't have anything in our servers, the cloud or whatever. We go into your portal to extract any information we want. So you have all that information that comes out of that station.
That's correct. That you have access.
Okay.
Whoever's appropriate on your side would have a username and password and access it.
Whenever we wanted it or whatever.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay, so in the fleet portion, like here when we go and we get gasoline in a car, we have to use our fob, we have to add the car number, the employee number, the mileage on the car in, the mileage on the car out, all those types of things. Can we program that so the station will know the car that's plugged in the fleet and the mileage all the time? Or is those things we'd still have to add?
So I'm trying to think of there might be some ways we can automate that, because like the charging station, because it's a bit different when you start converting it over to electric, like we refer to it as like state of charge, how many miles are left, in the vehicle. And that's typically monitored and managed through a telematics system, which is separate and specific to the vehicle. That being said, we can integrate through APIs with telematics systems to try and get all that data in one place. I would just have to pull in our team to see how we go about doing that. But that's stuff we're capable of doing. It's just, it'd be some custom work we have to do. But the state of charge is managed by the telematics system, not the charging station.
No, it was just a question because if we can take something off our plate that we usually have to do, it kind of makes it worthwhile to have that software package. And thus, and it makes more sense.
Yeah, that's why it takes a lot of that off. Let me take a note on that and just. I'll get a better answer for you and circle back with you directly on that, and you could share with the group, or it might even be worth having a team that focuses on that does that type of setup to hop on and kind of clarify or do a demo of how we would be able to do it. But I think Yep.
Yeah, Brian, this is kind of for you, but also for Ryan. It kind of appears that all the savings that we were going to have in service and stuff on our gas switching to electric just got ate up by the portals. If you're looking at $1,000 a year, you're looking at $1,000 a year per portal.
But we're paying that now in gas as far as that part goes.
You're going to save some gas money, but as far as the servicing, the electric cars were a lot less to service, and now we're eating up a bunch of that on the portal side here, keeping that upgraded.
No, what I'm saying, Jay, is our upkeep, what did we pay last year, or maybe it was the beginning of this year? Was it $60,000 just to update the gas pump? We already are paying for all this on the gas side. It's really the same situation. It's just done differently. So, those things are going to be a wash. We're just like you pay for all that to monitor the fuel, the amount of fuel, and all the stuff that goes in the cars. This is just a different way it's done on a computer, and some of ours is computerized on the gas too. So that's different. That's a different cost. They do probably match apple that way. I don't know the difference in the cost there, but I know our upkeep on our systems is very expensive here, and Matt Jones may be able to answer that better for us.
And not that I would recommend this, but just for so everyone's aware, I mean, these incentive programs do require these network capabilities because they're going to want to have access to some data and stuff like that. So there is that like 5-year period of time that you'll be required, but a lot of it, upfront because of these incentives, that'll basically most of it be covered. That being said, at the end of that 5-year term, you do have that option to not renew. I think after 5 years of using the software and kind of becomes part of the day-to-day and you'll see the value in it. But at the end of 5 years, if you don't want any of those ongoing costs, you don't have to renew that subscription. And then the station will charge a vehicle, but that's all it'll do. You don't have any of those other features or anything like that. So just so you know that can be done.
Matt Jones?
Just to clear that up, on our quote, we have a 5-year commercial cloud plan, and then we also have the 5-year prepaid Assure plan. So the
Yep.
Assure is the maintenance you're talking about right now,
Yes, Assure is maintenance, cloud plan is the software network.
which is $1,250 annually once the 5 years is up. And the cloud plan is separate at $1,320 per plug. So you're really looking at closer to $2,500 per year if you were to get the Assure plan.
Well, that's for a 5-year. I just want to make sure I understood it. It's just because I'm not looking at what that was sent to you. What was proposed at 5 years. So that's not on an annual basis. That's for a 5-year kind of prepaid.
Oh, no, that was broken down annually because the 5-year cost would have been $10,552 and $9,980. So per plug, you're looking at approximately, according to this, $2,500 per year if you were to go with the Assure plan plus the cloud plan, which are both mandated by the state contract. That's why they're on here. Not
Yeah,
that
so-
we need to do that.
Yeah, so $2,500 for the 5-year maintenance program is $2,500. So if you divided that by the 5 years, that gives you the $500 per year.
No. Not according to this quote, because it's.
Yeah, I'd have to see that quote, but that's how it would work is for one dual port station, 5 years,
Okay.
$2,500.
I got you now. So because it's 5 years, but it's also the 4 ports.
Right.
Yeah, so if you look at the quantities and
But
all,
they're two separate quantities, so it's still.
I can take a look at what you're looking at. I just don't have it in front of me right now, and I can kind of break it down and show you annual costs. I want it to be very clear and simple for you guys. Sometimes on a quote it could with quantities, all that kind of stuff. But I'll send you a follow up with the broken down.
Gotcha.
All
Okay, I
right.
think I had Matt Hicks next.
This is really not for you, Ryan. This is more for sort of Matt, Melissa, and Brian. Well, the information we got in government ops, sort of quotes we got from Plug-in Stations Online, which I guess is a approved state contractor. And I'm not sure how ChargePoint and Plug-in, do they stack each other? Are they competitors? They're separate from each other? How does
No,
that work?
they're a partner of ours. So they do turnkey installation work and everything. Because we're manufacturers, so we do a lot through partners like Plug-in Stations Online, where they sell our equipment and install our work. They also do the service work and install work, operations and maintenance program. They're one of our largest in the state of New York. They've put in thousands of stations, probably almost half of our stations in New York. But yeah, no, they're just a good local partner of ours based.
Okay, so I guess the question is, from the quote that we received from them, are there the costs that they quoted us in addition to whatever we're gonna pay ChargePoint? Or is the installation all covered in one big?
Yeah, it's all turnkey from them. So there wouldn't be anything else coming from us direct. So they're authorized to sell off of our New York State contract. They match our state contract pricing. So they're just giving you one turnkey because the installation is included in that as well.
So we hire them to install these at basically the quote they gave us.
Yep.
And then our only association with ChargePoint would be sort of a longer term situation as we progress. Is that
Yeah,
right?
help you with the
There are gonna be two
software.
charges from two different companies.
Yeah, that's correct. So they're going to do the turnkey, get the stations installed, up and running. But you will have a direct relationship with us because it's on our networks. like myself is here to help support your program and help you build and plan to scale and set up your software initially, pricing policies, get you trained up on it all. So we're here going to support you directly, but as far as how the transaction happens to get it all installed and purchased, that all is all done through Plugin.
Let's see, I had Dan Shaw.
Yeah, Ryan, I want to get down a little bit into the weeds of this, if you don't mind, financially. If we were to buy electric cars for our own, for the county, you have an option of getting a charger with it where we wouldn't need a charging station. And part of this program is the prerequisite is it has to be made available to the public. So I'd like to focus on the revenue stream to the public. If a person came to the county and spent an hour at the county, as far as I'll call them a customer, but somebody has to do business at the county, and I think probably an hour would be the average wait time they would be in there, whether it's in the motor vehicle or social services or court. What if they plugged their car in for an hour, the average electric car, what would be generated for a revenue stream? And what would the cost be to the county? And what would be the revenue to the county after everything is deducted, which is your 10% plus the electricity and the maintenance costs and everything? If we only had, a minimum of one car or two cars a day for an hour, is that going to at least break even, or is there going to be a cost to the county is where I'm going with this? I don't know. Can you answer those questions?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what your pricing policy looks like and what utilization is.
But you recommend that, so that's why I was asking you. You said that you would help us set those prices.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we can help you. I can help set prices. Typically, it's a slight markup on whatever you're paying for your energy bill. And then after the car's done charging, giving them a grace period to move their vehicle, then have some kind of an hourly rate. So it really depends on where the stations are going to be going and what's appropriate. But I am, I have seen, based on revenue collected at a station that offset, annual costs. I just don't want to overpromise on that because it's hard to predict what exactly your utilization is going to be day one.
Well, I kind of set the parameters when I said the average usage would be an hour per car, and you probably wouldn't average more than 2 or 3 cars a day. And I'm setting that, I think, I'm pretty conservative. I don't think.
So if you were to charge, I don't know, 20 cents per kilowatt hour, something like that, in an hour a day, you're probably, say collecting $1, $1 to $1, depending on the pricing policy, $1 to $1.50 for an hour of charging is how much you would be collecting from the driver, ballpark.
And then you would take 10 cents to that.
That's correct.
Yes. That's correct. Okay. And we would, after costs, what would we get? Maybe 10 cents. So we'd make 30 cents a day off a charging station. See, I'm wondering if it's worth the investment right now. That's why I'm asking.
What I can do is I can build a spreadsheet factoring in some of these assumptions and show you what that revenue looks like over a period of time. It might be easier to do it that way. This way you have it on a spreadsheet. I'll see if I can send one you can edit too. Like I'll highlight the fields that you can just plug a number in, and you guys can do that. So I will get that.
Thank you.
You bet.
Ryan, I just want to follow up on Mr. Hicks' question real quick. Who is on state contract? Are you? Is Plug-in Stations Online? Are both of you? Who's on state contract?
So ChargePoint's on state contract, but all of our authorized resellers like Plug-in Stations are also able to sell off our contract. So that's something we set up with OGS. They have a list of all of our approved contractors. So it's really us and everybody in New York that sells our product.
James Griffith.
To Dan Shaw's point, he wants to get comps, and I'd like to see comps too, and especially for areas where it's more more comparable to our rural setting. So, comps based on, what the amount of traffic that goes by our facility on a daily basis. I'd like to see, a similar or, breakdown of, the comps based on, a criteria like that. I don't want to get comps that are from the city of Albany on daily usage. So the comps need to be apples to apples, not apples to oranges.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree.
All right, thanks, Ron.
Yeah, you
Well,
bet.
and I think the other thing that Dan touched on was comparing to just plugging them into an outlet with the charger that comes with them. And I guess those are available even in 240 now. The difference is you have no data when you do it that way. You just know that electricity went out the outlet and you get charged for it. Okay, I got day and a half.
Ryan, can you tell me the performance of the charger? Because Dan Shaw's question about the revenue per vehicle per hour. We know what we pay at the county per kilowatt hour. And Brian, I think it's like 5.6. It's like a nickel, 0.6 per hour is what we pay per kilowatt hour. But
Okay.
what's the equivalent of kilowatt hours that a charger would put out in an hour?
It'll range between 3 kilowatt hours and 7 kilowatt hours, depending on the vehicle. Like a Prius Prime, that'd be like 3 kilowatt hours, smaller battery. A Tesla, Chevy Bolt, something like that would be on the higher side at 7.
Thank you.
Clary.
Ryan, thanks for all this information. I kind of, as I've been listening to you, I've been thinking about a couple of things. What is the lifespan on these charging stations?
We say the useful life is 10 years, but we have some, even our earlier generation stations that have been operating longer than that. But we say 10 years.
Okay. The other question is, it sounds like we own it, but we don't own it, kind of, the way you've been talking. So who actually owns these charging stations?
You own it. You own it. You operate it.
And then when they complete their lifespan, we're responsible for getting rid of them?
Yeah. I mean, usually what we've done with people like, 10 years from now or whatever it is, we usually have programs that people can upgrade them or something like that. But yeah, they're your equipment at that point. So it's up to you on what to do. If we have stations or something new, we would certainly be working with you. We want to be a close partner over the years, so we'll likely be in touch. And as we have new technologies out there, we see if we can put a program together, maybe if you want to upgrade, that kind of thing. But yeah, you're ultimately responsible.
Okay. And that type of language is included in the contract? Lifespan and?
I don't know if lifespan is. I'd have to double check. There's not really a contract with us. The only agreement is really the cloud service agreement for the network.
The setup. Another question, we are thinking in gasoline as far as data. And as you were talking, I don't know how you do a mileage, because the electricity is being used for heat, air conditioning, windows going up and down, dashboard, computerized info. How do you sort out the data so that we understand what you're giving us? That mile rate kind of goes away.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understood that question. You might.
Okay, I'll try to word it in a way that is clear. When you're doing the kilowatt hour, right, and you're trying to put the cost of driving this vehicle, the electricity is also used for heating, for air conditioning, for the dashboard in the car. There's a lot of other uses that electricity is being used for. So we kind of lose the cost per mile. You're not able to sort that out in the data, cost per mile.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Yeah, the dashboard on our side is just calculating, energy dispensed, from the station.
Right. Interesting. It's just a different mindset. It's interesting you talking about it, because we're not used to thinking this way. And so as we move forward into the future, I think it's will be a stretch for all of us to go from understanding gasoline usage and mileage to learning this new way. And I think it's fascinating. I think it's, I appreciate you coming here today and helping answer more questions. And there'll probably be more. So thank you.
Ryan, would I be wrong to relate that to kind of like when you warm up your truck in the wintertime or car and the fuel burns, so you're losing miles per gallon as the vehicle warms up and you didn't go anywhere? Is that kind of the same?
Yeah,
scenario?
it's a very, exactly. It's a very similar concept to kind of what happens in a gas vehicle. It's just a kind of just a different, just the kind of the new world, a new way of kind of looking at it. So that's a
Yeah,
great.
and there's no way to break that down with a gas vehicle, but we probably could with an electric vehicle in due time. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and there might be some things we can do. I'm just haven't had to do. You know, I can look into that. You know, and this is, you know, we're the leaders and the largest, but you know, we've been doing this less than 15 years, right? A lot's happened, so it's constantly evolving. And this kind of feedback super helpful because it helps us build out different capabilities and everything.
Ryan, I'm not sure if you can address this specifically, but when the governor announced on April 23rd that there's $2.8 million available for municipal charging stations, and it's part of the programs that he's working on to try to obviously incentivize more municipalities to put in charging stations and put to electric cars. You know, what we talked about in government ops was a couple of public charging stations out front near the main road, and then 4 charging stations out back for our DSS fleet behind our buildings. In the press release, it says that $2.5 million is available, blah, 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 in locations that maximize access by the public. If we're looking at just putting 2 charging stations that are quote unquote access to the public and the other 4 are sort of ours proprietary for our DSS vehicles, would we still get all the state and NYSERDA and whoever rebates and freebies and all that kind of stuff? Would we still be eligible for that?
Based on what you described, I believe so. I would just want to take a deeper dive and just verify that, but I think you'll be okay.
All right, I'd like to get that in writing if possible, but that was one of the questions I had. I got more, but Jim's got his hand up.
Go ahead, Jim.
I just want to reiterate that employees working at the county building that plug in are considered public.
Sorry, I think my line cut out there. Were you guys able to hear me?
I can hear you now,
Yeah,
Brian.
On my side.
Go ahead, James. Repeat
So I
what
just
you
want to
said.
reiterate that employees working at the county that plug in during the day are considered public.
It just, when they say restricted, it means, you know, having a defined access control that, because we can set it up where like only employees are able to authenticate a charging station. So me from the public, if I went to use it, it wouldn't use it. So it can't be restricted access. So it doesn't have to be on our public map or anything, is my understanding. And I'll verify this, but we have monthly meetings with all these groups to talk through these programs, and I can ask the question again to them. But if there's an actual access control enabled preventing people from being able to use it, then that could hurt the ability to get that larger funding amount. But if you took it off our public map and somebody technically could come in and use it, but likely they're not going to, or you have a separate pricing policy for them, then there's ways to maybe make it fit in, but we would have to probably just double check with the utility.
Yeah, my concern is that we do it our way, and then we find out because we've got them back out, way back where nobody really uses them. The public doesn't know they're there. We don't get the rebates and the incentives and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I'd like to get that in writing that this is our plan. This is our.
As long as they're public, I think we're good that way.
I don't care what you think. I
No,
want it in writing.
that's
I want it in writing that if we do it this way, this is our net cost. Not that we think because we're going to do it this way, we think our net cost might be this.
No, I think if you restrict them or say they can't use them, you do not get the money. I believe that's true.
I'm not saying
that's part of the.
I'm just saying that our DSS cards are plugged in there overnight, and our employees are plugged in during the day.
No, it's the other way around. our DSS people will be out during the day, public can use them during the day.
No, I said our employees.
Oh,
Drive
it's
electric
employees.
cars.
I was gonna say the DSS cars would be gone during the day.
I just like to see it in writing that that program that we were talking about setting up in government ops still qualifies for the maximum incentives based upon Matt's handout. That's all I want to confirm.
Okay, and so, Ryan, to go off of that, I believe when we talked the first time, you said we could restrict time of day or something so that we didn't have them behind our building in the middle of the night. Is that true? Yes, no, maybe?
Yeah, you can, like, so if they were gonna be used for fleet vehicles overnight, you could restrict them at that point. And part of this is all part of the application process. So it's part of the application is defining what you're looking to do. And then the utility would, which isn't binding by any means if you kind of go through this process, and then the utility is going to come back with how much they're willing to fund through an offer letter. So you would, you'll have it in writing if they approve that full value. That would be part of the application, is describing what your use case is.
Very good. Who's next?
And sorry, I had to go off video. I did have to hop in the car for a meeting I'm on my way to. I apologize.
That's okay. Is there any more questions for Ryan? Okay, Ryan, we did get, we have proposals from Plug-in. So are you saying those are ironclad, partly are ironclad, or where would that be at?
Yeah, I mean, that would be your proposal. We're happy, and I work closely with them on a lot of projects. We're happy to assist with some of the applications.
I guess what I'm asking, Ryan, is if they've already given us all these numbers, do they know that's the numbers through the power company and the incentives they'll get and everything? They should have that accurate, is what you're guessing?
Well, yeah, we would have to, if they get the green light. I mean, an application hasn't been submitted to the utility yet. If you want them to submit on your behalf, we would need a letter of authorization in order to do so. Otherwise, you would have to submit, directly to them if that's something you wanted to pursue.
Okay.
But we're happy to do it for you. We would just need a letter of authorization, which we do often. It's a letter of authorization from your utility. It's their paper. It's just because if they're going to ask for information, they just want to know we're not just pulling potential locations out and trying to get funding before we, they want to know we're actually speaking to you, basically.
Okay. Any more
But
questions for Ryan?
we're happy to jump on that for you. I can get that rolling quickly. I can get that letter of authorization over to you, and do that. And again, nothing binds you to a project, but it'll at least get something in writing from the utility as to what they would approve.
Okay. Any other questions for Ryan before we let him go? Very good. Well, thanks, Ryan. We really appreciate taking the time and answering all our questions.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Apologies for having a not hop off, but go dark there on the video for a little bit while I had to get to a 12:30 meeting. I apologize.
Oh, that's good. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, you bet. Thanks, guys. Great questions. And yeah, I have my list of to do, so I'll circle back up with you directly, Brian, on that, and you can disperse to the team.
Very good.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. So, I guess now we should bring in Matt Jones and he can discuss the charging station proposal that he sent out this morning and what he knows and doesn't know about the deal after listening to Ryan.
Okay, I think everything changed. I just want to make it clear that Ryan was correct and I was wrong about the annual expense. So it's going to be in the range that he was giving you. I was wrong. I just wasn't looking at it as a 5-year deal. I think everybody has in front of them the proposals. I kind of pared it down a little bit to make it easier to read. I'm not going to go through this. Right off the get-go, I'm just going to mention that New York State DEC possibility of funding that just came in April. This was the first time I heard of it. So we haven't explored that yet. And as far as the proposals that I put in front of you, these are, I guess, from what Ryan said, as hard as numbers as we can get until we actually submit that application, which he was just talking about at the end, where if we give them the ability to do that for us, that would be our guarantee that we would be getting the funding that's listed on this proposal.
Okay, now on your list, it says there's no NYSERDA rebate for non-public installation. So if we went non-public, we wouldn't get any of that program that's out now anyway.
Any of the NYSERDA money would get 50% of the electric utility incentive, which covers your make-ready cost. So these two, and he flipped through a screen real fast. So these two, NYSERDA and the electric utility incentive, are piggybackable. The New York State DEC one that he brought up at the beginning there, I did see online, that isn't able to piggyback with these two. But it did say something about 80 to 90% coverage, so I would be interested in that, just to look at it to see if we even fit it. We didn't really go down that road at all, previously, but I think this is the way, this is the way that he's suggesting to go anyways. If you have any questions on the numbers, just, I guess, shoot them at me. I tried to make them, so they made sense to everybody, but if there's something confusing, rather than me going through line for line, I just have you look at it and shoot questions at me.
So, just, what's that?
It's still up.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions on the proposal itself? Go ahead, Matt.
So if we just did this ourselves, it's gonna cost us $115,000. If we do it non-public, it's gonna cost us $86,000. And if we make them public access, our cost is gonna be net cost is closer to 46. Did I understand that right, Matt?
If we did it all alone, it's 100.
Your numbers are off a little bit. If we were to go out on our own without any incentives, this would cost us $156,800. If we were to go all 12 non-public, it would cost out of our pocket $114,689, because we would still be recouping a certain amount of the make-ready cost if they were non-public. If we make these publicly accessible, the total cost of the project out of our pocket would be $42,800. So you're talking about 30% of the overall cost, or 70%, you can just say it the other way, 70% of the overall cost, if we make them public, would be grant and incentive money.
And those are out-of-pocket costs. You still have all the in-kind costs that you and the DPW would put in, which could be tens of thousands of dollars, we just don't know, but we're gonna absorb that cost ourselves
Correct.
to do the work, right?
That's
But just our out-of-pocket cost would be $43,000.
Sure.
So with that being said, that's why the DEC grant's probably worth taking a look at. If it pays 80 to 90, you might want to compare the two.
Yeah, I am interested. He kind of flew past that, so I'm thinking that there's probably some hitches in that one too, that as a county or municipality, we may not meet, but I will look into it. That was the first I've heard of that one, and he did say it just came out at the end of April, so to be fair, I mean, it just came out 2 weeks ago, and I haven't heard of it until today.
Yeah, they put all the money towards the infrastructure and only 300,000 out of the 2.8 went towards cars. So that was very interesting.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I had to leave for a meeting, but I'm back. I missed what went on in between, but when those point thing was, when his slides were going by really fast, there was one that said there was money for point one, and so I didn't know if you can recoup some whatever program that
Well,
was.
that was on the DEC one. That was very interesting. I saw that too.
You could, to see if you could recoup.
Because where Matt went, that it might pay for the in-kind costs.
Great.
That might be a possibility. Is that what you saw, Matt Jones?
Well, what I saw there, yeah. To that effect, what I would probably propose though, is if we did meet that New York State DEC one that was 80–90% of the whole cost, I would say, I don't know why we would probably do it ourselves, you know, the trenching and stuff like that. I think at that point, you would probably hire that out if you're getting it covered at, you know, 80–90%. I don't think it would make sense for us to do it. But like that, like I said, that's up in the air. I don't know what's in that New York, so I'm just assuming.
Okay, so any more questions on the proposals? Okay, so you can take that off the screen so I can see everybody again, I guess. Matt Jones?
What, I mean, I don't know what you want to get out of today, Brian, out of this meeting, but I would suggest to get that letter into a, without, because it doesn't lock us into anything, but let's start that process of applying, you know, to make sure that these are good numbers, the rebates and the incentives. He needed a letter from us, basically, and he's going to send us that information over, just saying that they can act on behalf of us to start looking into making sure that the NYSERDA and the electric utility incentive numbers are correct for this location. And it doesn't bind us to the job, but I think we need that before we move forward. I think that's the biggest concern is what if, you know, and I think that would end that.
James Griffith.
I'll make that motion.
Clary, second. More discussion, Matt Hicks.
So just let me get it straight then. So what we would do then, Matt, is give him the green light today to submit an application to NYSERDA and the utilities and all the powers that be with a proposal. And then if it's approved, the application is approved, we will then get back the real numbers.
Correct.
And what our net cost would be.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we can have the debate about where's the money coming from and whether we want to go ahead forward with it. We're not locked into anything. We've just gotten the numbers back from the application. We've been approved the application. Just like getting approved for a mortgage doesn't mean you have to take the money out, right? Is that what we're talking about? Is that the lay of the land here? I just want to know the steps so we don't think the train's leaving the station today that we can't stop this train.
That was my understanding, Matt, was it doesn't lock us into anything. All it does is give us the real numbers.
And gives you time to check out the DEC thing to see how that piggybacks on all this stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably start looking into that sooner than later, you know.
Dan Shaw?
Muted, Dan.
Dan, you're on mute.
How about now? Is that better?
Yeah, it's a lot better.
I'm afraid Matt is, and the train part, we're buying tickets. And I don't want to do that until we make a decision whether we want to go forward with this. Now, Brian, I want to thank you for all the hard work you put into this. I don't want to take anything away from all that, but from what I've heard from that man today, I think there's very little use right now for charging stations. We don't need them for buying electric cars. I know that debate is still going on whether we're going to buy electric cars, and I don't think the charging stations are going to impact whether we buy them or not buy them. And if we take just the pure numbers of the proposal, you're talking what, $42,000, $43,000, and I don't know if we're going to get anything for that. The usage is going to be minimal, and if we go down, and I'm looking into the future, which anybody can do and make any kind of prediction. Let's say by the year 2035, they do go 50% electric cars. When they do, everybody's going to want a charging station put in, and I bet you they're going to put them in for free, because if they can take 10% off the top of a charging station, these companies will be putting them in for free. It won't cost us anything to maintain it. We just have to provide a space for them. I think that's a heck of a business opportunity, a 10% margin on their investment. So I see no need for charging stations at the county level. For $42,000, we save the money.
That's a great segue, Dan, because that's kind of where I want to take the philosophy of it. I usually just talk numbers because that's my job. So let's go to the philosophy here. If they're going to be all electric in, say, it's 2035, it's less than 15 years away.
Right.
If the money's going to be dispersed over the next 5 years, that was where I was at, was if it's going to be over 5 years, let's learn now as to what we need to invest, because the build-out won't be the initial build-out. The build-out will be the overall build-out over 15 years.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we won't have to invest anything. It's going to be free.
No, you'll have to invest everything, because first of all, the one thing they're paying for is about $60,000 worth of power in the backyard that we would have to pay for if we don't do it under the government program. The power itself just being moved is the problem. They would install the stations for nothing. You won't get National Grid or NYSEG. They won't do that for your house now. When they know a house is being built, they say, no, you pay the $30,000 or $100,000 to get that line run to your house. That's kind of what we're avoiding here, is just that. The stations just give you the data and the understanding whether there's actually savings or not. So that's what was behind the whole concept, was if we had 5 or 6 cars and the stations there, and because if you had them in a fleet, you have to charge them. There is a need in a fleet. And everything is based on a fleet, is why they're doing this. So the whole idea was 5 or 6 cars, you get the data, as James Griffith said, and I even heard Dana said it before, it's for our area, it's not for Albany, it's not for New York City. What's the result here? We can wait 5 years and spend $40,000 on a consultant and tell us what we need or how we do it, or we could spend it up front, have data in our own scenario, and see if there was actually savings or not. That was the point of the whole process. And the longer you go, the more years you go, the further you get and the closer to just being a mandate and you spend the money and do it yourself. That was my concern, because the fleet is that's where the savings is the fleet. There's no
sense arguing.
question on that.
That's your opinion, he has a different opinion.
No, I'm not arguing.
We can't make the future, okay? Let's both understand we can't predict.
That's kind of where the discussion's going, and
Thank you,
they've
Matt.
said 2035, so I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Yes.
So I say just fill out the necessary application and go forward. I know from past experience, just because you do it doesn't mean you have to use it. I did one last summer. I haven't used it yet. I can still use it. I did check. But go ahead and fill it out. Get the information, check the DEC one, and move on.
Okay. We have a motion in a second. And this is to go. Do you want to say this, Matt?
Well, it's just a motion, but this is just to submit an application. You actually get the firm numbers. That's all we're doing is submit an application. We're not locked into anything. I may vote for this, Brian, but I reserve the right when the numbers come back to say this is a stupid idea, I don't want to do it. Just be prepared for that. Don't call me out as a hypocrite again because I voted for something in one situation that changes as it progresses. Just understand that.
I understand the way the game's going.
We're just trying to get more information here. That's it. That and the comps, what it's going to cost us to build it and what the comps are for revenue. So
Call the question. Okay, let's just vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Dave's blood sugar rules.
Dana half opposed. He's not on the committee, so it doesn't matter. Hey, happens. Okay, so it's approved that we're going to go out and get more information. Very good. Okay, now, have we covered everything that's on here? Is there any other business?
Albert.
What's that?
Albert.
Oh, the stimulus capital project, yes. Missed that one. There's Bob addressing that. Who's going to address that?
Al wanted, the treasurer.
Al wanted to.
Yeah, I would like to ask the board at this time to set up the capital project for the stimulus money. We now have guidance. We now have the ability to request the funds. So I think that in the near future, we will be moving forward. This will be a perfect opportunity to get that capital project set up.
Okay. Moved by Dave, second. Cassie. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Dan Shaw?
Yeah, now that Al said you have guidance, has the committee developed any guidance for the towns on this yet?
I don't think we're gonna develop
No, there won't be,
guidance for the towns. I
there won't
think,
be any guidance for the towns. That's gonna come from the state.
yeah, Association of Towns has a meeting a week from today, I think at 12:30 or something. So I believe there's an opportunity to get on that and see how it's gonna affect the towns.
Okay. Thank you.
And I assume after we get through some of the guidance, we're gonna meet again.
Right.
So
Gonna meet
we're
tomorrow.
gonna meet tomorrow. Guess I got that memo, forgot about it, but I remember now. Okay, so,
Got more resolutions, right?
thought we were done.
Dave.
Gotta do the IDA.
I think we just have the IDA.
Don't you have a couple more resolutions to do? We did.
Oh,
We did,
plus
Jase?
executive session and all that stuff?
Okay.
All we have left, I think, is an executive session, I believe, unless there's something I missed.
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss ongoing negotiations with HPE and contractual terms and just brief the supervisor where we are at this point.
Okay, is there a second to do that?
I'll second it if he said the word brief.
I'll be brief.
Second by Matt Hicks. Okay, vote to go into executive session, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Must have been-
And we'll adjourn out of executive session.